Three, two, one. We are live with the Oregon Grape. Okay, so we interviewed Jay yesterday, and these videos will both be posted at the same time, same day. But as some of you know, we had been intending to do a debate. We had some issues with making that debate happen. Couldn't really agree on the terms. We might talk a little bit more about that in this interview. But Jay had his say, and we now have in the studio with us John West. So John West, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It's your turn. It's your turn to share your side. There's so much nuance and confusion over this recall petition, and it was great to sit down with Jay and kind of dig into some questions, and now we get to hear the other side, because that's what you got to do in the political arena. Everyone gets a chance.
Well, I always put it this way, and maybe it's not politically correct, but there's Jay's side, and then there's the truth, and we're going to get to the truth tonight.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big things that we went over in the interview with Jay is that it seemed like I kind of asked him, like, what did you feel was like the main grievance with John West that like led you towards this recall petition? And it was obviously several, but a large one of them was the like ignoring the will of the people sort of thing. And there were a few topics that we went over with that. And one of my big questions that I was searching out for this is basically, when is it ignoring the will of the people, and when is it just that there are always going to be some people who are upset over any given decision, And so we can dig into some of these issues, a big one, maybe this would be a great one to start with, was law enforcement. The recall petitioners were very upset over law enforcement losing some of their budget, and that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I had thought that there was a little bit more to that story, but Jay, as you may know, he pays a lot of attention to the meetings, and he reviews the budgets and things. And so, would you like to explain a little bit of your side on why the recall petitioners were so upset over the law enforcement losing some of their budget?
So, law enforcement did not lose any of their budget. Okay, so this whole thing reminds me of a shell game. So what had happened was there was $2.8 million of grant money that was awarded to the sheriff. Well, let me take that back. It was $5.6 million, and it was spread over 2 years at $2.8 million per year, equaling 5.6. So he had that in 22 and 23. And so come 24 of the budget year ending in June 30th of 24, his $2.8 million ended. He spent it. That equaled that was 2 years that was one of the years of the 5.6. Mm-hmm. So his budget went down $2.8 million, but that was grant funding. We didn't cut it. It was money that the state said, we're not giving you anymore.
Now, one of the things that Jay had said was that there had been a tax that had passed where there was a new law enforcement district, and it was supposed to bring in something like $5.3 million for law enforcement, and that this was supposed to add like 20 new deputies. And then, of course, when the budget for 24 to 25, I think is the one that's in question, you guys only approved 5 new officers. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. So the statement that the law enforcement district of 99 cents per 1,000 on your property tax did pass. Mm-hmm. And what they said was this is going to provide 20 deputies, 6 911, and 1 evidence person. Okay? So in the 20 deputies, it's a little bit confusing because you got to go back to the ballot, and what it reads is it only provides 20 deputies as long as we get the BLM contract, the Forest Service contract, and the Cave Junction contract for a deputy.
Okay. What are these contracts?
These are contracts that contract a deputy for a year. Okay, so you got to go back to the reading of the deputy of the 99-cent so law enforcement levy. So we are at 20. We hit our 20 deputies because we got those 3 contracts and our 99 cents. And so we were able to do that. Now, this group says, well, we had already had 10, 12, 16 deputies. And after the 99 cents happened, we cut the funding out for those deputies. We didn't cut none of the funding out for those deputies. Those deputies got paid for through the 99 cents. What had happened, and this is the misconception that the public needs to understand, is it goes back to that $2.8 million of in the 23-24 cycle.
And I asked Jay about that grant money, and he didn't seem to know about it, which was...
well, the reason why is because there was 2.8 and 2.85, $2,850,000. There was $5.6 million of grant funding that went away. It went away. So it had not, the board did not cut one penny of funding from the sheriff. It was grant money he was living on, and he knew the $5.6 million was gone. We weren't getting it anymore. The government was cutting it out. So he said, well, commissioners, what are we going to do? And we said, boy, Dave, we only take $5.3 million in property tax money. And under state statute, we have to, 1.7 million of it goes to the assessor. That is state mandated. We have to have an assessor, state mandate. We have to have a clerk. We have to have a treasurer. We have to have a county surveyor. We have to have public health. We have to have certain departments that are mandated.
These are included under that tax revenue of the $5.3 million for law enforcement?
Yes. And so we take out all the mandated departments and we pay for them. And then what's left of general fund, most of that money, the commissioners before me has always tried to give as much of that money to law enforcement. So when you see and you go back to the 23-24 budget and go, well, law enforcement got $7 or $9 million. Well, you got to go back and say, where did it come from? Well, $5.6 million come from these 2 grants, and $2.3 million come from this grant, and $800,000 come from the general fund. Okay. The only thing we had control over was the general fund. So when the grant money went away, the law enforcement district passed, 100% of that money was spent on exactly what the taxpayers was told it was going to get. So then the sheriff said, well, I want funding for 10 more deputies. Well,
that was the request that he made, was for 10, not
10 more deputies.
Okay, because the number that I kept hearing was 20 new deputies.
No.
Okay.
He has 20 deputies now.
Okay.
He asked, and if you go back and look at his budget proposal, he proposed to get 10 more deputies in the 24-25 cycle. So we said, well, Sheriff, we don't have the general fund money. By the time we do the mandated departments for 10 deputies, are you going to be able to hire 10 deputies? And he said, no. He said,
why not?
Because he said, one is the manpower's not out there. And he said, the best I'm probably going to do is 3 to 5. He'll be able to fill those 3 to 5 deputies.
Of like that, those are like the viable candidates that are available in the community.
That he thinks will apply.
Okay.
So he said, and And we had the pre-conversations, and I said, well, you're asking for 10. He said, well, you always ask for 10.
Yeah.
And then if you get the 5, you're happy.
Yeah.
And so he went and it was quoted in the Courier, well, this is going to be a dog fight. Well, he was setting the stage, knowing there was not funding for 10 deputies.
Yeah.
Where was we going to get the money? There was no money to give to, and he knew it, but he was hoping at the end of the day, boy, if I get 5. And so when the board said, well, we're looking at doing 5 deputies, and he said, I'd be tickled with 5. That you can listen to it on the tape. And so then Herman says, well, I propose that we give you, I think it was, well, I'll back up. So the proposal was to give him funding for 5 deputies and cut community health $165,000.
Okay.
And
what does community health encompass?
Community health gets around $4.7 million of grant money from Oregon Health Authority, state of Oregon, different for vaccines, for all the different programs in it. They got some federal money coming in, they got state money coming in, they got all this. And so he said, so the health director said, well, I need $165,000 because I'm short of some state and federal money for my program. And it was like, okay, so Herman made a motion, and you got to remember there's 3 citizens on the board, on the budget board, 3 citizens, 3 county commissioners. Mm-hmm. So Herman makes a motion. I make a motion that we fund 5 deputies and cut community health $165,000. And I think Dan DeYoung seconded it. Okay. And so we went into discussion. And the discussion was, well, Sheriff, can you hire 5 deputies within this next year? Well, I'm confident I can hire 3, but I don't know if I can hire 5. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If you don't think you can hire 5 deputies because there's not 5 deputies out there to hire, and we give you the money and it's just sitting in an account,
it's not doing the county any good.
It's not doing the citizens any good. It's not doing the county any good. So why would we cut public health $165,000 when the money's just sitting there doing nothing?
So here's my question, because when we talked about this issue with Jay, I was asking him, basically from my point of view, from a political standpoint, it doesn't make sense to cut law enforcement. Like it's not something that would even look good as a politician, right, to make a decision like that. And so I asked Jay Meredith why he felt this decision was made, well, not just by you, but by the board, but of course we're talking about you. And he basically said that he believed that you were trying to deliver on your campaign promise of cutting the fat, and that's why you took this money away from the law enforcement. But of course, what you're explaining now is that it was more so that this money was no longer available. And you guys were kind of scrambling to figure out the best way to make this work and make everybody happy. So I guess just my question is, why do you think this is? If this is the case with how it was with law enforcement, that it wasn't you cutting the budget, but it was just that this money was not available and you guys were working with what you had. Why do you think that the recall petition presented it in this way?
To mislead the public.
Okay.
I mean,
any elaboration on that?
Let's just be point blank.
Yeah.
When the recall people said that he cut the sheriff's budget, cut sheriff funding, so they just stopped.
Yeah.
So when people hear that, oh, well, he's against law enforcement. No, that's not true. I voted out of the group to cut public health, and to do that, I was the only no vote. I voted no let's not cut the sheriff. Let's not cut public health. Let's discuss this further. The budget committee and the two other commissioners voted 5-1. And so I got overruled. So it was done. So when the recall committee says that I voted to cut law enforcement, no, I didn't vote to cut law enforcement, and I never cut law enforcement. The grant funding that we lost for law enforcement went away. Nobody cut law enforcement because that money is gone. It no longer exists because the state and the federal government it says it's no longer available to us. So when they say, oh, well, this is what the sheriff was afraid of, that if the citizens passed the 99 cents, that the commissioners would cut his budget. The commissioners did not cut his budget. So when you talk about 10 deputies, trying to fund 10 deputies or 5 deputies or 3 deputies, these were not deputies that were in his budget. These were new deputies. And so I would never consider a deputy cutting the fat. It's not cutting the fat. So when the recall group uses that word, oh, well, he's following his campaign promises and cutting the fat. No, a patrol officer is not fat.
No, it's essential.
It is very important, and it's very important to me that the citizens have law enforcement and they're safe in their homes. They're safe when they go to the store. They're safe when they walk in the park. They're safe when they're on the river. They're safe wherever they go. So, but what the recall group's not telling the people is, well, technically, or really, the commissioners didn't cut $5.6 million or $7 million out of the budget. This was grants that went away.
Yeah. Okay, so let me ask this, because when we did the interview with Jay, I think we did around like an hour and 40 minutes, and honestly we could have done another 2 or 3 hours, because there's a lot of stuff in this recall petition. There's a lot of stuff to go into, and so we can talk about all these different issues, and we'll spend time on whatever you feel is important to go over. But what do you feel? The thing is there's some lawsuits that are possibly going around, and you've told me off camera that that you believe strongly that there were outright lies put into this recall petition, which is obviously against the law. You can only put factual truth within a recall petition. So what are the more egregious parts of this recall petition, and where are the areas that you really sincerely felt lies were included in the petition?
So before we dive into that real quick, John West makes no decisions by himself. We are a board of 3. It takes 2 people to vote yes or no for it to move either direction. So the public needs to realize when the recall group says, John West did this, John West did this, John West did this, totally false.
Yeah.
I can't do anything on my own. That's why we're a board of 3. So when they make the statements that I did all these things, no. Let's look at how the vote come out. Sometimes it was 3-0. Sometimes it was 2-1. Sometimes I voted yes. Sometimes I voted no. But at the end of the day, the 2 people or the 3 people that voted yes passed it. I didn't pass it by myself. I can't.
So with that understood, which are the areas of this recall petition that you felt there were just honest to God lies thrown in there?
So when they said I broke state and federal laws, show me. Bring forth where I have broke state and federal laws, where the state has said I broke any laws. They can't. Now, they can make allegations that, well, he broke campaign finance laws.
And that was the one I was going to mention.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, has the state fined me? Have they even wrote me a letter that, oh, you broke campaign finance laws? No. This is the Lily Morgan and Jay Meredith saying I broke it, but not being able to prove it. Now, they're going to say, well, he didn't put his name on a sign or he didn't do this. Okay. If that's breaking the law, why hasn't something happened to him? Why has not the Secretary of State, why hasn't the state fined him, wrote him a citation, did anything? Well, I don't think they, according to them, well, nobody's filed charges against him. Okay. If you robbed a bank and they haven't caught you yet, can I say you robbed a bank and you're guilty of bank robbery? No. Until they catch you and charge you with bank robbery, I can say you're a bank robber, but you haven't been caught or convicted. They can say, oh, he broke state law and federal law. What laws did I break? And how am I guilty of it?
Yeah.
Am I guilty because they say I'm guilty? Or am I guilty? Why isn't a court, the Secretary of State, Department of Justice, the DA, why hasn't somebody said, Mr. West, you broke these laws and you're guilty of this?
Well, you know what's interesting is in the original interview that I did with Jay, he brought some documents with him, and one of them was a campaign finance manual where it listed the section on where anything over $250 you have to report as part of campaign advertising or whatever. So one thing that I asked him during the interview was, "Hey, you brought me this manual. Do you know where the state law is on it? Because I'm not sure how this manual translates to, the actual state law or how it relates to it." And so he actually did send me a link that evening that will be included in his video of the Oregon state law. I did not read through it entirely, but there is a part in there that talks about expenditures over $250. But do you feel confident, even if something was brought up against you on this, that you will not see any trouble with it?
So one is, when we're talking about campaign finance, I hired a gal with a service from over at Bend, Madras area, and she handles all of my campaign finance. I don't do the treasury part of it. I send her all the bills. She pays the bills out of the bank account that I keep putting money into. I just sent her the bill for my vote no on recall signs, and Orstar from the Secretary of State said compliance, everything. I've only got you're in compliance on everything from the Secretary of State. So when they say, well, he broke this and it's campaign, so okay, and you say this $250, if I'm not campaigning, under freedom of speech, if you want to put up a $5,000 sign that says, vote for Donald Trump, you don't have to report that to the Secretary of State.
Well,
because
that's what I was wondering, is where that, if there's like a loophole here or something or whatever, because this isn't a campaign that you're doing for yourself, and it's not even really for any kind of a election or anything. Well, I suppose the recall petition, of course, it involves you, but it wasn't for your election.
It was for the 17116.
And that was the one that they
on the charter. That's the one that they quote.
Yes. Yeah.
So I purchased signs and I put them up on my own as an individual, and it was my freedom of speech. And if the state of Oregon says, well, you have to report that to us, then okay, every single person that went out and bought over $250 worth of Donald Trump signs
Yeah.
and plastered them all over their farmers' fields along the freeway, did they report them? No.
And that's the thing.
Because
is I
under
was,
freedom of speech,
Yeah.
they paid for those out of their pocket, just like me. So if I wasn't, how did I benefit from, I wasn't running a campaign on 17. I was expressing why I wasn't putting it for you. I was putting it out based on my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things is when I was, like I said, I didn't actually thoroughly read through the state law on it, but I was wondering about where it actually applied this expenditures over $250. And, I'm wondering if it's the type of thing where, like, does this only apply when you're donating to someone's campaign directly? Because, yeah, kind of like you said, I mean, think of all the Donald Trump paraphernalia that people have purchased. There's plenty of people who have spent more than $250 on Trump hats and Trump shirts and all this stuff. And so I would be interested to know where that applies. But I also just wanted to know that if you feel confident that nothing is going to come from that.
So the 17116 was what? Year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So did they bring forth any documents that the state said I broke the law? Did they bring forth any documents? No. This is their opinion on how they read a book. But did the state call and find me? Did the state call and say, oh, Mr. West, you have violated this law and we need to understand what makes you think you had the right to do this?
My big question with that campaign finance law is why nothing ever came from it, because you're right. It's been about I suppose the recall petition only started earlier this year, but I was just curious why nothing came from it, because if I'm being honest, that was the only thing that I saw in there that I thought really had grounds, like they maybe had an argument, because he showed me the state law, and obviously I didn't understand it fully and stuff and when it applied, but I was interested in why nothing came from that. So anyways, what are some other grievances that the petition to recall has brought against you that you would like a chance to refute? Where were the other areas where you felt there was dishonesty?
They continue to say, I went against the will of the people.
Yeah. Okay.
21,000 plus people voted for me. There is, in today's numbers, 70 or 71,500 voters. Okay. Out of the 21,000 that voted for me, 17 or 18,000 voted for Brian D. LaGrange. I won by 57%. Okay. So what is it that reason they voted for me? They voted for me because they wanted me to look out for their rights. They wanted me to cut government, make it more efficient, make government smaller, make government more honest.
They wanted a water park at the fairgrounds. I'm still rooting on that.
Yeah. We'll get into that in a few minutes because I got some good news.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, you had talked about an amphitheater there or something.
Yeah, but I even got some better news.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's go water park. Okay. All right. Go ahead, though.
Okay. So how am I going against the will of the people when 57% of the voters that voted in the election said, we want you to do this? Mm-hmm. I'm doing what I said I would do and more. So they say I went against the will of the people because I did not sell the Williams or agree with another commissioner to sell the Williams folks 320 acres of Josephine County citizens' timberland.
And just for the viewers, this is the Pipe Fork property.
Pipe Fork.
And it's this property in Williams. There were I suppose a group of Williams locals that were kind of trying to protect it from logging at one point because they wanted to use it as like a recreational place to go and hike and do things.
Yeah. So it had been going on for 4 years. I come into the scene and I said, "What's the deal with this Pipe Fork thing?" And they said, "Well, they come before the board on a weekly business session on Wednesday at 9:00. And they said, well, we want to work with you. We have a water conservation group that's willing to put up $2 million, $2,020,000 based on a Yellow Book appraisal, la-di-da-di-da." And I said, "Well, what's it worth?" "Oh, well, so the county says, well, the county forester did a recent timber cruise and an appraisal of what the logging costs are and what the net value would be to the county, and it's $2,820,000.
Okay.
And I'm like, why would we sell it for $2 million? If there's $820,000 more of money in timber on there. I said, has anybody put a land value on the 320 acres? Because that 320 acres, I said, I'm pretty sure if it's zoned woodlot resource, which I think it is, there's a good chance it can be split into 4 80-acre parcels, because this is part of what I do for a living. And I said, 4 80-acre parcels has this much value. And I said, so, and everybody said, well, the county doesn't split land up. And I said, no, I get it. But if we want to sell it, why not get its true value out of it? And everybody explained.
Which would be beneficial for the county.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
drawing in money that they
and
could then spend
I said,
on
my
other
job
forestry
is, one of my jobs is to look out for waste, abuse, and fraud. But another job that I have is to make sure that I get the best deal possible for the taxpayer, because this is their money, their property, and I work for them.
So here's a question I'll throw at you, right? Because we're talking about will of the people, right? Was there any part of your mind during this these negotiations where you were like, you know what, let's just make the Williams people happy, sell it for the 2.3 or whatever that was listed? Was there a time where you considered that, or were you basically just kind of looking dollars and cents? You're like, no, this is not a good deal, we're not going to sell it?
No. So I was always hesitant. And the Williams people says it even on Wednesday. We know that Commissioner West really wasn't for this from the beginning, and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. But Herman and Dan, they were, because they had been working on this for 2 years prior to me coming on.
You think they were just more like familiar with these people, and they were kind of like, like, okay, we'll try and make these folks happy? Was that sort of their attitude? Or?
Well, they knew more about the whole thing than I did. Mm-hmm. So I had to get up to speed. So after time, you got to remember, there's a year and 6 months, or a year and 6 months goes by before we make a decision. Mm-hmm. So in the first year, I kept saying, listen, we're not getting enough. We got to get closer to what its value is. And so the Williams people says, okay. And the board says, listen, if you'll get closer and meet us at least closer to halfway of the difference, maybe we can put a deal together. And so that's fine. But when I come on, the Williams people come and they made their pitch all the time. And the question was, what do you guys really want this for? And they said, listen, the county clear cuts, and we've seen other people clear cut, and we don't want this property logged. We want it left in its natural, pristine of not being logged. And we want to make sure that it is always left open to the people to enjoy the waterfalls, the animals, the lizards, We can come and see the wind blow through the trees. We can walk through the forest peacefully. And so they told us that over and over and over. That was their reasoning for wanting this property so bad.
Well, and you want to know something? One of the common themes from both the Jay Meredith interview and also just talking with recall petitioner supporters as well was that there's this idea that you have in some deals negotiated in bad faith where you acted in support of political allies instead of the will of the people. And so I think I had actually had a conversation with you about this where we talked about the Williams locals, and it was actually a much smaller group of people that were really concerned about this Pipe Fork property.
About 30.
Okay, it's about 30 people that were really concerned about it. And so one of my thoughts was like, okay, so they say, hey, John West had a bad faith negotiation on this property because he's a logger guy and he didn't like that these hippies from Williams, wanted to protect the trees or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, maybe, if you're a logger guy, you probably look at a property more pragmatically and less interested in singing to the birds. But at the same time, one of these questions I was kind of asking Jay is like, when is John West colluding with political allies or just serving political allies, and when is he just acting to serve essentially his constituents, and the people that elected him? And it sounds like that's sort of the position you took with this Pipe Fork property is like, listen, it was not valuable for the county to sell this property to this group of Williams locals just so that they could, preserve it for hiking and enjoying the nature and stuff. Enjoying nature is great. I love hiking Cathedral Hills and stuff. But it sounds like that's where you came at it with these negotiations. But that's one of these questions I was asking is like, when is it ignoring the will of the people? And when is it just kind of serving your constituents? And yeah, other people are going to be upset. And so if it's okay, I want to pivot into this library issue, if it's okay, because I had some questions on it when I was speaking about this with Jay. So someone had told me, and just to preface for the viewers, and you'll hear a little bit about this in the Jay Meredith interview, but they had made this complaint that you had spearheaded this attempt to financially damage the library by encouraging people to withdraw from library districts, and of course that's where they get their funding is from the library districts. So I had spoken with someone who was trying to withdraw from the library districts. She'd been trying to withdraw since before you were in office. And so my question to Jay, which I honestly did not really get a satisfactory answer on, in my opinion, was why do you say that John West spearheaded this library withdrawal process when people were trying to do it before he was in office? And I would love to hear your side of that library issue.
So that is one of the issues when they say I broke the law.
Yes.
I didn't break the law on the library issue. Oregon Statute 198 says that any person outside of the library district can opt into the district and choose to pay property tax to be inside that library district. Mm-hmm. Any person inside the district can petition the Board of County Commissioners to opt out of the district. Now,
so there is a legal process to withdraw from a library district.
It is.
Okay.
It is. And the library, whether they'll say it, they acknowledge it and agree with it. Now,
probably not big fans of it, but
so
I imagine as a library in the the age of information where you can get information for free online, you're probably always fighting for funding.
Well, and here's something you never hear from the library district is go back and look at Lane County. There was a person, an entity that petitioned in I'm trying to think, it's either 1995 or 2005, petitioned Lane County to opt out of the library district in Lane County.
Okay. An individual, a group of individuals?
It was I think it was an individual.
Okay.
And they petitioned to have their property removed from the library district.
Okay.
Read the whole summary. The State Library Commission agreed and said, we're not going to disagree. We agree they should be able to be removed from the district. Mm-hmm. The district cannot serve their property.
How do you determine that when a property is being served by the library or not?
So,
Because for me, if I'm not checking out books, it's not serving me.
well,
Which is kind of the thing I was saying. I was like, listen, I don't go to the library. I would probably try and withdraw from a library district. But yeah, how do you determine that?
Okay, so the statute of 198, just think about it. You own 5 acres and you're inside the library district. Mm-hmm. The statute says you must show how the library district services your territory.
Okay.
Now, that's what the statute says, territory. Now, you have to go back and look at the definition of what the statute means by territory. It means property. Okay. So, now, if you petition the Board of County Commissioners and you say, the library district does not service my land, okay? And I say, well, sir, tell me how it doesn't serve your land. And you go, it doesn't give me police protection, doesn't give me fire protection, doesn't supply me water, doesn't supply me sewer, it doesn't supply me with anything. So you're the county commissioner. I come to you and I say, this library district does not service my property. And I lay out all those, every reason. You've got a decision to make. How does that property, how does that district, the library district, service
how's that property actually being served by a library? Yeah.
We're not talking about me. Okay. So let's just say you own 5 acres. You don't even live on the property. Mm-hmm. How does the library district service your piece of property?
It's definitely a hard argument to make.
Is it taking books to your property and dropping them off and your property's reading them?
Yeah.
But if the library makes the argument to you that, well, wait a minute, we supply a library and you live on that property and you get to come and read books and check out and take back home and you live on that property. But it's servicing you. The property's not reading the books. You are. The statute doesn't say you have to prove how it services or doesn't service the person living on the property.
That's a really good point.
It says territory, meaning property.
Because when you think about, you think about like law enforcement, right? And like having a law enforcement district, it's like the sheriff will respond to a call and come to your property, right? If there's a domestic abuse, right? They would come to the property. The library does not do that. And so that is a really interesting argument to make. So listen, one of the complaints about this whole issue with the library was that they said that you approved a form that was it was not a legal form and that the library had to sue you before you changed it. I tried to ask Jay about the timeline on this because he basically, the opinion that he was of was that the only reason that you fixed this issue on the form was because the library threatened you with a lawsuit. Is that true? How did that all go down?
No, that's not true.
Okay.
So what happened was a couple petitioned the board to opt out of the district. They made so they didn't come to the county commissioners and get a form. They went to a legal counsel and said, hey, we need to know, where do we get the form for opting out? And legal said, we've never had anybody ask to opt out, but by state law, you have the right to opt out. Mm-hmm. But you have to go through the process and get the board's approval.
So they didn't have a form available for it?
The county did not have a form. So it's my understanding that legal said, well, we'll take the opt-in, you can take the opt-in form and just change some things on it and use it to opt out, because it's would be similar to the same form, just a couple of things changed. So this couple filled out the form. They took it to the assessor. The assessor took $60, the same $60 they take when you opt in. So they collected $60 for them, signed off on the form. Then it says within 5 days, I think it says the statute says within 5 days, you must present this form after it's been approved to the library. The library stamped the form. And you had asked me for some documentation long time ago. I had that for you, and it has the library stamp that they received it and accepted it. Okay? They accepted this form as the opt-out form.
Why did the library bring a lawsuit against the county?
So we'll go a little farther with this. So then it comes and it goes through, and then it goes through, it's got to go through a 21-day period and all this, and then it comes before the board. And the board hears the arguments and says, boy, I don't know how this library services this piece of property. And so the board votes.
It's a hard argument to make that it
is.
The library is
so
serving the property.
The board votes 2-1 to allow these people to opt out.
Who held out?
What's that?
Who held out? Andreas, or was it Dandy Young?
No,
at the
it was
time?
Dandy Young.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so,
do you know why he wasn't in favor of it, of the withdrawal?
His argument during the meeting was, listen, the voters passed the library district. I know the state law says they have the right to petition the board to opt out, but he said, I don't agree with the state law.
Yeah. Well, that actually goes into a different question for me, and you could finish your point, but I'll circle back to it.
So it doesn't matter whether I agree with the law. The law is the law. And so the library said, well, we don't agree that somebody should be able to opt out of the district. And we said, well, the law says they can, and here's Lane County allowed somebody in the library, So then they said, well, we don't believe your form is correct. And we said, okay, legal counsel, are they using the proper form? And they said, well, we've actually started studying the form, and we believe it probably could be updated and fixed better.
Okay.
And we said, did the county allow them to use not the correct form? And well, yes and no. Well, that's not an answer. And so Herman said, when it come to our attention that the library come to us and said, well, we don't think they used the correct form, we started questioning it. Well, during that time of our questioning it between the commissioners in some of our meetings, the library district files a lawsuit. And so Herman says, listen, if the form's not correct, but everything else is correct, but it starts with the form, let's freeze the process. Let's not let the withdrawal finish. We're going to freeze the withdrawal right where it is until we determine, do we have the correct form or not? And we determined that the form was not 100% correct. So we said, okay, the whole process is froze. The sorry people, but until the form is correct and you use the new form to come back to the board, your withdrawal is removed.
So here's a question. The campaign against you has really been pushing this idea of you sort of working with these political allies and sort of only serving political allies. The explanation you're giving here is really more like this was presented to you and you guys were just working with what was given. So is there any reason to believe that you had some part in trying to financially damage the library district? Were these people trying to withdraw close friends of yours that you had worked with try and withdraw? Why is this the narrative that the recall petition has brought forth?
So this couple, I know who they are, and I know her more than I do him because I probably talked to her a few more times. But I didn't help them on getting out of They come to me and said, hey, I was looking at a statute and I said, you need to talk to legal counsel. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, and that tracks a bit with my experience with it as well, because this woman that I had talked to said she had been trying since before you were in office. So that didn't like pass the sniff test for me when the petitioner recall was saying that this was something you spearheaded. So that kind of tracks with what I had experienced.
So
as well.
I am not going to spearhead anything like that if you yourself wants to.
Because you haven't returned How to Parent Your Transgender Teen yet, and I was going to rent it, but it was out, and then I just gonna. They got so many weird books in that library now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So and this wasn't going after the library and trying to get people. I had nothing to do with it. They went to legal counsel.
Yeah.
When it come up, I said, you need to go to legal counsel. I have no idea what you're talking about. I wasn't involved, And so they went to legal counsel. Legal counsel helped them with the form. It come before us. And so, I mean, that's where it goes. But here's my job. Whether I agree, you submit something, whether I agree with you or like it, if the law says it's your right, I have to follow the law and say, you know what? I may not agree that he should get to do this, but the law says you can.
Well, this kind of brings me back to Dan DeYoung holding out as the only person who voted against it, because it sounds a little bit like one of his concerns was that maybe he didn't want to set this precedent for people withdrawing from the library district, which basically is what the petition to recall was saying. Is they were saying that if you had approved these withdrawals, then suddenly everybody and their grandmother was going to be withdrawing from the library district and the library was going to fail, which for me is a little bit like, well, if everybody wants to withdraw from the library district and it's enough that the library isn't able to stay in business, sounds like the people have voted and we just don't have a library anymore, which would be a bit of a disappointment. I kind of said on the last podcast, like, I don't think I've been to the podcast in a while. I haven't been to the library in a while. I remember when they had stick bugs in the terrarium when I was a kid. That was fun, but nowadays if I want to learn something, I buy a book on thriftbooks.com or I find it online.
Well, let's take it one step farther.
Yeah.
Let's say we follow Dan DeYoung's lead and says, well, the voters in 2017 or 16 passed the library district, 52-49 or 51-49, whatever.
Which is where you get into the claim that you ignored the will of the voters because they voted in this library district. Yeah.
So not that matters to me, but Dan made the argument, well, the voters passed the library district, and he says, I understand this is state law that says you have the right to opt out of the district after it's been in for 2 years. That's what 190 statute in the 198 says.
Okay, there's a time frame on it.
After the library district has been in effect for 2 years, you can petition to have the library district resolved, or you can petition to be removed from the library district. Now, that's state law. Dan says, well, I know the state law says they have the right to petition, but I don't agree with it. Well, okay, I don't agree that I should have to drive 35 miles an hour when everybody else is driving 55 miles an hour. But if that's the law, who am I? So it goes back to me as commissioner. I did not get elected to break the law. I did not get elected and hold my hand up and say, I swear to follow the laws of our land and our state and everything, and take an oath, and then say, well, the law says you can opt out of the district. But you know what? I don't know if I agree with the law, so I'm going to vote no, not following the law, because I don't agree with it. Well, if every person felt that way, there's no reason to have laws.
Yeah.
Now, There's a lot of laws I don't agree with. There's a lot of laws I don't like, but I still got to follow them.
Yeah. Yeah, you were complaining before the show why we couldn't take shrooms, you know? And I was like, hey, come on, man. This is a family-friendly podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
But do you understand so when they say, I'm not following the will of the people, okay, am I not following the will of the people because I followed the law? Mm-hmm. Or if you ask the citizens of Josephine County, do you think the county commissioner should follow the law? I bet it would be 90-something%. Yes, I think they should follow the law just like I have to follow the law. Mm-hmm. Now,
I hope it'd be higher than 90%.
Well, yeah. Well, I think we have a few people who don't think.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I'm just being nice.
Yeah.
So that being said, my hands are tied. Now, I could make a decision. No, sir. I think the library services your property. But don't you deserve an answer on why I think the library services your property?
And from what we talked about, it's a very hard argument to make how a library serves a property.
It does. But I think it's a high bar. You can't just say, oh, well, it doesn't service the property. I have to give a reason why. So I think it's a high bar that you've got to get over, and I believe the state made a high bar there. But how does the library service Home Depot? Mm-hmm. How do I make...
Books on building sheds? I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, but...
That'd be serving an individual, not the...
It's not servicing the territory, which is the property.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't write the state statute. I didn't write the state law. It says, how does the library has to service the territory, meaning the piece of property. So let's remove Home Depot's building. How does the library service that piece of property sitting there blank?
Yeah.
Now, put the building back on it. How does the library service that piece of property? Can you make an argument to me or the other citizens of Josephine County that every person that goes to Home Depot is benefiting from the library?
Yeah, it's an almost impossible argument to make. Yeah. No, it's a really interesting topic, and it sounds like there is a legal process to withdraw from the library district. There was this mistake made with the form, and
we froze the process.
Yeah,
we pulled back this couple's and said, listen, the form wasn't correct, so the vote 2-1 is null and void. You didn't get to opt out because the form wasn't correct. So the legal counsels did a new form. It never went to court. This never went to court. We submitted the form to the library and their legal counsel. They looked at the form and said, yep, form meets the state statute on being able to opt out. We agree. We drop our lawsuit.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't sue us over the couple being able to opt out. They dropped their lawsuit because our form was correct.
Yeah, it really seemed like it just whittled down to that form. It wasn't as if there was anything.
But it wasn't the commissioners breaking the law using the wrong form. The form that the citizen got or received was approved by legal counsel. The commissioners don't make the forms.
Yeah.
The forms are made from building, planning, legal, whoever. And I'm not throwing legal under the bus.
Sure.
Because nobody knew it was this big a deal. And so now it's like a 6-page form. And
Yeah, who'd have thunk this was going to be, going to blow up into this,
So-
maybe you would have voted with Dan DeYoung just to save yourself the hassle, but
Well, no.
like you said, the league, yeah.
I'm never going to vote with Dan or Herman or Andreas to save myself a hassle. I'm going to vote on what I think is right.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to always the law, I always am looking, how does the law back up how I vote?
Yeah. So listen, let's hop on some other topics. I think we got a pretty good overview of that one. Was there anything else that you would have liked to have another opportunity to provide some clarity on, as far as some of the points on the recall petition?
So they bring up the will of the people many times.
Yeah.
And they bring
kind
up
of a
the will of
consistent
the
theme
people
throughout it.
with the 4-H OSU. Okay. So my job is the same as the county commissioners. I don't make any decisions for this county on my own. It's a board of 3. Takes 2 votes. So, waste, abuse, and fraud. Those are 3 things that the Board of County Commissioners are summoned, you might as well say, with. We look out. Number 1. Okay?
Now, I remember from one of the conversations that we had about this previously was that you withdrew funding from OSU Extension because essentially a number of funding is given from Josephine County to OSU Extension, which in turn allows them to receive a larger amount of grant funding from the state, I believe is what happens. And they had been using some of this money that they got in consequence of receiving the funding from Josephine County to pay for some different things that you felt was not appropriate, employees in Salem, things like that. Now, one of the arguments that was made against your decision here, or the board's decision here, was that OSU Extension was not using the county's money for these services, but it was using the money that they got as a result of receiving that county-funded money. Do you want to talk about that at all?
So all money they received is taxpayer money. So the 0459, which the taxpayers voted for the OSU 4-H district in 1995, laid out it could pay for administration, it could pay for master gardeners, and 4-H. Okay? So it mainly stated those 3 things. So 30 years later, they have 38 different programs.
Okay.
Those weren't put on the ballot to the voters. Okay? I'm not saying they're bad programs or wrong.
But it's not something that was necessarily voter approved.
It was not, though. All these programs were not voted on. And so let's just get there. So now let's make another step forward. The 0459 in today's market equals, I think, $441,000 of property tax money from the voters of Josephine County.
Okay.
Now, when you get the 441,000, when OSU / 4-H gets the $441,000, that allows them to apply for state and federal grant money that was somewhere around $765,000 more.
Okay. Is
Okay.
that like almost double, or?
Yeah, close to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what is grant money? It's taxpayer money. So, when you get the 441,000, and now you get, because you got that, and now you apply for $765,000 of grant money, which is taxpayer money. What is the grant money? Who is getting the grant money? It says Josephine County OSU 4-H district. Where is the district in Josephine County? What was the money given for? To fund the district of Josephine County. Okay?
Yeah.
So, when we ask for the records of, well, what is this $765,000 being spent on? It's being spent on 14.4 employees.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a minute. Where's all these?
14.4. What is there? A quasi amputee working for him?
I don't know. So
what's that 0.4?
Yeah. Well, they say we share an employee with another county.
All right.
So, and I said, well, where does these employees work? Well, a lot of them work in Corvallis. And I said, okay, can you give me an accounting of these employees and how much time they spend in Josephine County or working on stuff for Josephine County, OSU / 4-H. Yes, that serves the county. And they said, well, we share all of these employees with Douglas County, Jackson County, and Klamath County. And I said, well, wait a minute. If we're paying $765,000, how much is Douglas County, Jackson County, and Klamath County paying? Because if we're all paying $765,000, and I did the math real quick, and I said, well, that's $3 million plus for 14 employees. How much money is these people making?
Yeah. And are they accepting applications?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't make that much, and maybe I want a job there, you know? And so I said, listen, I need a breakdown. And they said, no, those are our employees, and that's our money. And I said, wait a minute. It's not your money, because without our $441,000, you don't get the $765 of taxpayer money, which is supposed to go to our district.
Yeah.
So
now
we argued on that point for a long time and never got what we asked for. So then I said, well, wait a minute. You have the office building and the auditorium over there, and it's 2 buildings worth a lot of money, and you pay $1 a year. But in Jackson County, you get buildings over there, and you pay them $60,000 a year. Well, they charge more rent than you guys. Well, I said, well, it's not you guys. I never agreed to this. This happened before I come along. And so, and I said, well, the board made that decision with you. I can't change it on my own. So anyway, I said, okay, there's 38 groups that use these buildings. How much money do you charge each group? Well, these women who do exercising twice a week or twice a month, we charge them $600 a month. And I said, well, that's $7,200 a year. And I said, you charge the kids in 4-H $20. And then I got looking in their stuff, and they said, well, and I said, but wait a minute, what is this late fee? Well, if a kid doesn't pay their $20 by December 31st, we charge them a $5 late fee. I said, are you serious? You're taking in $1.3 million of taxpayer money, and you're charging some poor kid who may not have, their parents are lucky to get them in the program, and you're charging them a $5 late fee, 25% late fee? I said, before any kid pays that, I will pay it out of my own pocket and give it to you people. I said, are you insane? I said, so how much?
Did you feel like the attitude of OSU was a little bit money hungry, and
it was greedy?
Kind of
100% greedy.
So one of my thoughts here is that so there did seem to be like a significant amount of people who were upset about the defunding of the OSU extension, and so part of this conversation here is ignoring the will of the people and all of that sort of thing. So did you really just feel that that the savings that we were making here was much more important than the number of people that would be upset about the loss of funding?
So when you say a bunch of people, roughly there's 120 people in Master Gardeners, and I want to do everything to keep them there. And at the end of the day, 165 kids are no longer in 4-H. Where are they at? Josephine County Youth and Ag. So in the last year, when we chose not to levy the tax on the citizens, it did not cost you $441,000. We saved every citizen from not paying a property tax on that. So back to this is when it come down to 4-H and you're getting this $441,000, but now there's only 6 kids left in 4-H because all the rest of them moved to youth and ag.
What do you see happening to OSU now that they've lost that funding? Do they have enough funding coming from other areas? Was there there was a lot of this talk about kind of like all these other resources that OSU gives, like resources on farming and land advice and stuff. Are they doing fine or like?
So, the recall group and part of the loudspeaking group says, oh, well, our wineries count on OSU. No, they don't. Because I talked to a lot of the wineries. They have their own bug, dirt, leaf, water person specialist hired. And do you know what? RCC has experts that teach classes. They're more than happy.
So you feel that the recall petition really inflated the amount of services that OSU is actually providing to the community?
I think OSU was patting their pocket deeply, and the citizens had no idea all the money. So just back up a little bit. Ask the citizens, how much money was OSU and /4-H getting a year? Well, I don't know. According to you, they were getting $441,765. No, they were getting more than that. Where were they getting the money? Well, let's see. They were charging the master gardeners. They were charging the canning group. They were charging the group to exercise in a building that they pay $1 a year on, and they were getting $7,000 a year out of it.
It's a little sketchy, it's a little
38 groups, and if you charge them all, and you charge the kids, so at one time they were charging volunteers to be a volunteer $25 to be a volunteer. And saying, well, the money we take in helps pay for programs. Well, wait a minute. My specific question, I never got an answer to. You get this money from kids, you get this money from parents, you get this money from master gardeners, you get this money from groups that exercise in the building, you get this money from all these different people that use the building that you only pay $1 a year on. How much does it equal? Mr. Commissioner, it's none of your business. It's our money. Wait a minute. It's all Josephine County citizens that are paying the costs.
What's really interesting is, if you think of Josephine County as an investor in OSU, an investor would always want to know how the money is being spent and how they're contributing to it and everything. So you really did see OSU as kind of this bloated entity that was really just trying to grab money wherever it could, and that it was not providing enough services to warrant that type of funding.
So I didn't want to question the services. I wanted to question where all the money was going for what services you have, because you're no longer providing a service for the 4-H because 87% of the kids left.
Yeah.
Now, they said, well, we have bow and arrow shooting. And I said, oh, well, that's cool. How many kids are in it? 5. And I said, oh. And they said, do you know that we have a group that gets together and does Christmas cards and stuff for veterans? And I said, well, that's cool. I said, how many kids participate in that? 4. And I go, well, who's the group? Oh, we have a lot of people that just donates time and helping out. And I'm like, well, I'm confused. We're 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 talking about all these costs and we're talking about all this money, but at the end of the day, I can't see where all this money is going.
Yeah.
And so, it's my job to make sure that the taxpayer and their money is being spent right.
Well, this has kind of been something that you've been focusing since your time in office is basically just really kind of holding these different entities' feet to the fire and taking a really good look at them and making sure that the money is being spent well. And so there obviously have been a lot of budget cuts and funding cuts since you've been in office. Can you talk at all about where you what your kind of I guess like end goal is with this, and where you see these budget cuts starting to kind of like pay off for the community?
So we just went through fee structure. Mm-hmm. Departments ask to have their fees raised, that they charge you, the citizen, when you come for a service.
For getting permits and things, or
a permit, whether it's a driveway permit, a building permit, a solid waste permit, a health permit, something in health department, some permit. So not every department asks to raise fees, but I think about half of them did or so.
Okay.
So some of the fee increase that was asked for was from 40% increase to 242% increase. Now, how do I go out to the citizens of Josephine County and say, oh, we're raising the fees 240% on you? And they go, well, I only got a 3% increase on my wages last year. How am I supposed to afford a 240% increase in fees? Mm-hmm. How many people was mad over a $12 a month water bill increase? So let's say we have a fee that was $75 and now the board raises it to $500. Wouldn't that probably upset you just a little bit? Mm-hmm. Because you may go, well, I can't afford that. And now we just priced ourselves out and the citizen. So now if the citizens don't come in and use what we have for them in the county, and if they don't get building permits or they don't get electrical permits or they don't get driveway permits or they don't get things for public health or other fees, pretty soon there's no money coming in. What do we need the program for? Yeah. We outpriced the citizen, but it's like you can't raise property taxes to the point where, listen, citizens, if you want the DMV, we're going to make the fees so high that you're going to pay 100% of it. They're going to say, I don't want DMV. Well, you got to have
I'll ride a bike.
Yeah. So, but the point is that we have to downsize in government. We have to. Government, we have roughly 450.
It's outpacing what people can afford with all these fee increases.
The costs.
Yeah.
The costs. We have roughly 455 employees. Mm-hmm. We need to do better with smaller government, less government, and more efficient government. There's not one citizen in this town disagrees with that, I believe.
Yeah. So let me ask this. I was really, and we're coming up on, I was going to try and have these episodes be around an hour and a half here just to give enough time for everyone to kind of talk and everything. But, I was obviously disappointed that we weren't able to make the debate happen. I have my views on the terms that Jay tried to set. I felt they were much too restrictive. And so I was very disappointed to see it not happen. But kind of one of the things I'd asked Jay is, like, had this debate happened face to face. There's only so much that I feel I can do as a host of a show, because I just don't understand enough about all the nuances of the issues. What is some of the questions that you would have loved to have asked these petitioners? What is some things that you would have loved to address had you been facing them directly?
So I guess I look at it different than the recall group. Mm-hmm. You called me, asked me if I'd be willing to do a debate with them. Okay. So I said I would be willing to do a debate with the chief petitioner, Lily Morgan.
To be fair, I think it was actually your suggestion to do the debate in the first place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was back.
Oh, way back
several
then.
months
yes.
ago.
And then I brought it back around this
But
month,
then you brought it around, and I said, yeah, I will debate the chief petitioner, Lily Morgan. And then I believe you got back to me and said, well, hey, it's going to be Lily and Jay. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll debate both of them. Mm-hmm. And then I heard a little bit farther that it's going to be Lily, Jay, and Tina Gottschall from the library. And I said, fine, I'll debate all three of them.
Well, and that was the interesting thing is I'd actually kind of talked to Jay about how I wasn't sure if, for one, even just for facilitating the debate, if that would work very well. How do you set the time between, opponents and everything? But I wasn't sure if it would be fair to have 3 against 1. But yes, I do believe
I'll say
that you
this.
were saying that you were.
I believe I'm smarter than all 3 put together.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, so what would you have loved to have to address to them directly if you had that chance to debate?
So I was excited. You are running the debate. Mm-hmm. You set the questions. None of us get them. I'm here to answer your questions in front of them, that we can debate the questions that and you're not going to ask us the question, do you believe in blue sky or not? Yeah. You're going to ask us the questions that belong on the recall. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't for me. And what I didn't understand is Jay made a list of questions and regulations about the debate.
When just for the viewers, some of the things that were included in the terms was and I'm not sure if it was just Jay or the recall petitioners in general, but they wanted they wanted to have a lot of influence over the type of topics that were allowed to be talked about, which to me is not something that is generally something that a debate opponent gets to choose. That's something that the host gets to choose. And that was only one of the many different things that were in it. But please
every
continue.
topic of the recall is open for debate if we have time, but you run it. It's not for me to take over the debate and me run it, or them take over the debate and them run it. You hold both of us' feet to the fire, and you let us debate, but you keep it. You're in control of it. It's not for me to be in control or them to be in control. You are in control.
Well, and that's how I feel an appropriate debate should be hosted, and of course, based off of the terms that they sent, that was not what they were looking for.
Well, it really amazed me because I think it was term number 5. If my memory serves me right, they said they wanted me to put in writing that I would not sue anyone that from the recall group.
Yeah.
Well, what are they worried about? Did they do something wrong?
I had never seen anybody use a debate as a leverage to prevent legal repercussions.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the crazy.
I thought it was strange.
It was the craziest thing I had ever heard, and I thought, oh, well, I already know state laws that petitioner Lily Morgan broke, and I already know laws that Jay Meredith has broke. Is there something I don't know that they're worried about beyond that?
Yeah.
And so, or are they just realizing that I put out a little information, whether it was a radio talk show or on a newspaper ad that said they had violated the state statute, and they're like, "Oh gosh, he caught us. he caught us in lies and he caught us breaking the law. And boy, if we can get him to sign something, we can say to the courts, well, he can't sue us because he agreed not to sue us. The whole problem with the petition is, the recall is, I didn't have an issue with the recall. The recall is every person's rights. And I always want to protect your right to do as you see fit. My issue with the recall is it's based on 100% lies. Pure and simple lies. And the state law in 260, I think 5 something and another, says the chief petitioner must tell the truth in the petition on the reasons for why the recall needs to move forward. The explanations and arguments in the recall is based on lies, and the chief petitioner is going to answer the law and to the courts on why did she lie to the citizens of Josephine County just to try to smear me and to try to get the citizens to. And so the reason for the law is so the citizens are not told something that's not true, and then they found out later.
Well, it'd be misleading the public. Yeah.
And so that's what it's about. And so the chief petitioner is going to find out that she should understand this more than anyone else. She was a state rep. She was in politics in the state office. She should know statutes. She used to be a county commissioner, not saying she was a good one. She used to be on the city council, not saying she was a good one. She's got many issues going on over at Gold Hill, which we'll see how that fiasco turns out. She complains about me and the will of the people. I would like to ask her, do you think it was the will of the people that you voted to spend taxpayer money to put tampons in boys' bathrooms? No, it's not the will of the
Did that
voters.
happen?
Yes, she voted to spend taxpayer money to put tampons in boys' bathrooms. Did I recall
For
her?
nosebleeds, right?
Yes,
Or like-
I guess. But nobody recalled her over that. But so when we use the word of the will of the people, maybe there's citizens that are okay with it. Now, I believe there's more citizens that's not. But nobody recalled her over that. And I guarantee you there is more people at Josephine County does not agree with that than any of the crap they are spreading about me that are lies. And that is 100% truth. She voted for that bill as state rep.
You want to know something? It's a bit of a mind screw because when I speak with Jay, he swears up and down that they spent a lot of time making sure that everything entered in the recall petition was factual, and he seems like he's not. He talks as if he's not that he doesn't doubt the fact aspect of the recall petition at all. Which is honestly to me why it's a little strange that he tried to use the debate as leverage to prevent a lawsuit if he feels really confident in it. So it's just a little bit of it's just an interesting observation that I made there. So we're coming up on the hour and a half here. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we kind of close this off?
Well, there was other
people are going to be voting. When is the vote?
It's right now.
Well, it's out there. The ballot's out there. But when does it close? Is it
17th? December 17th.
They got a couple
There
weeks.
was as of last night at 6:10, there was about 7,000 ballots already cast.
There were already 7,000 ballots cast?
Yes.
Interesting.
So I could look on my phone and tell you how many ballots were cast today if you want to know.
Might as well get her going there.
Yeah. And so that will, right now, we are on pace. If we keep this pace, we're on pace to have between 30 and 40,000 ballots cast.
Interesting.
Which is almost unheard of.
Well, because what I was going to ask was how many votes do you get in a general like election? Like for the.
So during this last election, there
You
was
said you got 21,000 votes for your candidacy.
Yeah. So under a governor's election, there's about 34 to 40,000 votes cast.
That guy shut off? That's right. You're good. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And under this presidential election, I think it was around 52,000 votes cast.
Okay.
So,
Cards full? That's right. I'll throw another one in. Keep going, John. We'll keep the one camera going. And then
okay.
Just keep it going.
So I'm looking up.
Here, throw this guy in. See if he's got anything in it.
I'm looking up here to see how
What's
many.
funny is I was worried about that. I was worried about the card being full, and I told myself, like, nah, we're good. We got it. That's always how it goes.
It's always the way it goes.
Yeah.
So voter turnout. Let's see what we had for today. 1,900 votes cast today.
1,900 today?
We are at 8,643 votes cast so far in the first 4 days of counting.
Okay. Interesting.
So the 99-cent law enforcement service district, there was only just around 13,400 votes cast.
Okay.
And that was 3 weeks.
Okay.
We still have 12 more days of vote casting, and we're already at 8,643. So
gosh, that is so
we're
interesting.
averaging
It's kicking?
over 2,000 votes a day on average.
That is crazy.
So if we take 12 times 2,000, an average of 2,000 a day, that's 24,000 plus 86. That is 32,000 votes cast, which is unheard of for a special election.
Yeah. Wow, that is really going to be interesting to see those results there, Well, we know that we could assume that somewhere around not everyone who signed the petition to recall necessarily will vote to recall, will they?
No.
Yeah.
So here is my issue with that. Let's get that out in the open.
Yeah.
Because I don't want anybody to think that we didn't discuss this.
Yeah.
Why do I have a problem with the way the clerk went about determining the signatures? So there was 7,538 signatures turned in. Okay. So let's be clear. State law says 100% of the signatures must be verified.
Okay.
Okay? Doesn't say anything else. What did the state legislators pass on this subject? They put a bill out there, and it passed in the House and the Senate, and that's what made the state law say 100% of the signatures have to be verified.
Okay.
They put in a state statute through the House and the Senate that said 100% of the signatures have to be verified in a recall. The state statute says in a recall. Now,
this applies for state
state recalls,
officials and local ones.
Yep, it says and local government.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Secretary of State handbook says, well, you can do a statistical analysis over 4,500 signatures. Okay. State law says no, 100%. You got to check them all. So the clerk gets 7,538 signatures, takes out roughly 100 signatures because they were out of state people that signed it. And then she verifies, okay, all the rest of these names are people of Josephine County, registered voters of Josephine County. Okay. So then she goes and does a sample. I'm going to randomly take 744 signatures, names and signatures, and I'm going to check them.
Which is that supposed to be around 10% of the number of signatures they had, or?
Well, it's got to be around 9-10%, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So she does it and says, okay, out of that, I come up with this number, and I haven't figured out the number yet because I'm too busy doing the people's work instead of messing with that. But so she says, well, out of this number, I come up with signature verification that this many is good. I times it by this, and it comes out they have 37 good signatures extra. Okay. So if you start doing the analysis, some other people said, well, I did the analysis. She didn't even meet the margin of error. And so when I go back and look at court history, what sparked the House and the Senate to get involved into this law was there was judge recalls years ago. And it happened to be, from my understanding, Democrat judges were getting recalled. And this statistical analysis was used, and they said, well, we can tell there's something not working out right here.
Did they later find out that there maybe wasn't enough signatures?
They did, and a bunch of those recalls got overturned.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what's interesting is, I think I briefly talked about Jay with this either on the camera or off, I don't remember, but he had said that they had been referencing the signatures. They had kind of been doing their own analysis of it, and they had been referencing the signatures based off of like voter databases, and they felt confident that the signatures were all legitimate. And so I still believe it makes sense to do the due diligence and go and count every single name that's on that, because recalling a person is it's a serious thing. So I still think they should do the due diligence there. But yeah, I'm glad that you kind of explained that on why you were looking into that, and it wasn't just nitpicking or complaining. It was that there was actually a law that was not followed in the way that these signatures were.
So you just said what Jay told you. Now, I've heard Jay say the same thing. So let's make something clear. That's crap.
Really?
And let me tell you why.
Is it the database?
They have no database. It is not public record without a subpoena of a court to get the signatures.
Interesting.
So they are blowing smoke up your shorts like they are the rest of the public on this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, I can give you the database on every single voter in Josephine County.
Yeah.
That gives their name and where they live.
Interesting.
But I can't show you their signature, because if I could copy your signature,
yeah, he's giving me the signature.
I could forge your signature.
Yeah. Well, mine's very complicated. I don't think you could swing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
So I asked the clerk, how do I verify for myself all the signatures? And she says, the signatures are not public record.
Yeah.
Now, so when Jay makes that comment, unless you misunderstood him, which I've heard him say it, or he's going to say, well, I meant it different than the way you took it.
Sure.
No one knows what your signature is, or my signature, or his signature, or anyone else's, because it's not public record.
Yeah. All right. Listen, John, we better wrap this up, because I don't know, we might be running on fumes on our SD card over there. But I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on. You got until December 17th to get your ballots in there. So hopefully watch both of these interviews, everyone, and make an informed decision.
Vote no.
But yeah, there you go. All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks.